Good afternoon and good morning to some of you. Campbell McCrary here, Amvest Capital in New York City. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Rock Minerals Ltd. Rock trades on the ASX as WRM and as WRMCF on the OTCQX. We hope you'll enjoy today's program. It will also be available in replay mode. Amvest is a New York-based specialist management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resource sector. This call is most definitely, please note, for informational purposes only. Copy of this event will be available about an hour after we close, and you can get that at amvestcapital.com/webinars. Shouldn't be hard to find. And with that, we have not one but two great guests today, Quinton Hennig and Matt Gill. Matt, I'm going to make you presenter, and if you two gentlemen would turn on your webcams. Dr. Quinton Hennig almost needs no introduction, but he's an economic geologist of 25 years of exploration experience, mainly gold related. Explored at major mining firms, including Homestake, Newcrest, and Newmont. Helped start Novo Resources and began assembling their Australian exploration portfolio. He has a PhD in geology and geochemistry from Colorado School of Mines. And next to Quinton is Matthew Gill, Managing Director and CEO, also an engineer, 35 years of experience, and was instrumental in development of 3 gold mines, Porgera, Beaconsfield, and Ballarat, and is a 3-time winner of the Australian Mine Manager of the Year award, among others. With that, sharing your screen, I think, Quinton, you're going to kick us off.
Yes,
and,
I will.
There we are. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, Campbell. Look, it's a pleasure to introduce White Rock today. This is one of the stories that popped on my radar about a year ago. In fact, it was almost a year ago to this day. At a time when COVID was kind of breaking out all over the place, everybody was going in lockdown, and I got this email one day from a former coworker, Rowan Warland, geologist, who I worked with at Newmont over a decade ago, and he asked if I had seen the news that White Rock had put out. This was news they had put out, I think, late February of 2020. It was about a stream sediment anomaly that they had uncovered for gold in this area in central Alaska where they were exploring. Now, they were exploring for precious metal-rich VMS in this region, and they happened to stumble across a gold anomaly on the same property. In fact, it was kind of on the margin of it, so they expanded their land package subsequent. But it's really a case of 2 exceptional stories or exploration stories in one company here in Alaska. You have, like in the cover slide here, an image of this VMS style mineralization alteration associated with it. Bright colors that you see are clearly into a very, very large volcanogenic massive sulfide system. It has a considerable silver as well as a bit of gold, and it is mixed with polymetallic metals, including zinc and lead. Fantastic discovery. Current resource base over 9 million tons in 2 discrete zones that have been partially drilled. They're wide open for expansion. Many, many more targets on the property. But then they also have this gold anomaly that I mentioned called Last Chance. When I saw the data that Rowan pointed me to, it caught my attention because the style of sediment anomaly that was found is well known to guys like Rowan and myself, because it's a certain style of sedimentary sample that's been collected, and a certain way of analyzing it that it gives you a very meaningful, very sensitive data and tells you something about the likely magnitude of the potential for discovery. It was an absolutely screaming Blege anomaly. And when I saw it, I got very excited. Of course, right in the middle of COVID, it's looking a little dodgy about how to fund things. Weren't even sure if there could be a opportunity to work in the field. But over the subsequent couple of months, April and May of last year, things started to brighten up a little. You know, we started to kind of crawl out from underneath the rock and start looking around at what could be done. And one of the things that I talked to Rowan about was, could they implement a program, an exploration program, in spite of COVID? And he thought about it, he went away, he actually came back with a budget, came back with a clear plan for how they could do a project safely, you know, with COVID restrictions and whatnot. And in late May, I believe it was last year, I managed to get the group I work with here in Denver, Crescat Capital, quite excited to put in initial round of money on the really the seed round, I guess, or the lead round of money for a placement. Helped the company get cashed up, and by mid-June, I believe, they were on site and actually working. It was a very, very busy year last year, very short field program, given they got up there around mid to late June. But they were able to follow up on the gold discovery with sediment sampling. This is soil sampling across the property, identified areas of broad gold anomalism, and it actually managed to drill a few shallow drill holes as a first test. All of the holes actually hit anomalous gold mineralization, including one high-grade intercept, I believe a meter or two of 25 gram. But it is wide open for a new exploration season this year. Since that time, I've also gotten to know very well the VMS side of the story as well. This is a very exciting opportunity in its own right. Seeing a silver-rich VMS system in a very robust base metal and silver market right now, this is kind of an exceptional opportunity. Why do I get super excited about this? This reminds me of the Greens Creek deposit, which is also in Alaska. Greens Creek has been operated as a mine for many years now. Hecla has been producing silver and base metal from there for, I believe, at least 3 decades at this point. World-class deposit. What do they have here at Dry Creek and the Red Mountain property? I think they have easily have capacity to find a Greens Creek scale VMS system. It's wide open. These two zones, Dry Creek and the West Tundra, are wide open for expansion in their own right. Many, many more targets. And this year they plan an aggressive drill program, 2 drills on the VMS, 1 drill on the gold. And then collectively, I think this is one of the most exciting exploration companies operating in Alaska this coming season. With that, I will hand it over to Matt.
Thanks very much, Quinton. So thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to hear the White Rock story. You'll find a fulsome presentation of this on our website. With that, I will jump straight into the presentation. Let us know, I guess, Campbell, if things aren't working as planned. So that's the screenshot that Quinton referred to. That's our drilling that we did, our first round of drilling. When we get on the ground this year, this will be our 4th season. So we are somewhat experienced, even though we're Australian based. I'll let you read the disclaimer and cautionary statement at your leisure. So in a 1-slide summary, what is White Rock? As Campbell introduced, we are ASX listed, and late last year we also took out a cross listing on the OTC, and that is because of the significant North American support we were getting for our story, in particular from the US. And as Quinton touched on, our major shareholder, for example, is Denver based. We have 2 projects, both 100% owned, the Red Mountain Silver Rich Zinc VMS and gold anomaly that we'll touch on. but we also have an advanced gold and silver project here in New South Wales. And excitingly, we're in the process of acquiring an ASX listed company called Ozstar Gold, which is a Victorian gold explorer and producer. I'm based here in the wonderful gold mining town of Ballarat, centre of a lot of a big gold rush back in the mid-1800s. And the Victorian gold scene is certainly going through a bit of a renaissance, and I'll touch on that as well. So Red Mountain, as Quinton said, yeah, silver-rich zinc VMS, significant maiden JORC resource, 9 million tonnes, touching 600 grams a tonne silver equivalent, so 19 ounces per tonne equivalent. Given zinc is the dominant metal, you can under JORC also describe it in a zinc equivalent, and 13% zinc equivalent does put it in the top quartile of undeveloped zinc VMS projects in the world, and a significant land package, 800 square kilometres of state claims in Alaska. And as Quinton touched on, a large gold anomaly that we've called Last Chance. That was the focus of our exploration last year, and will definitely be the focus of more exploration this year. And I'll describe a little bit about that as we go through this presentation. And then we have Mt Carrington, northern New South Wales, 4 JORC resources for gold deposits, 4 JORC resources for silver deposits, feasibility study done, and its next step is permitting. It's currently under term sheet for a joint venture with ASX listed Thompson Resources, and I'll touch on that. But great financial metrics, you know, small, 35,000 ounces per annum, but a great rate of return, capital payback in just over a year. Once in production, spits out about $30 million Australian free cash a year. So good little earner. As I mentioned, under joint venture negotiation, where White Rock will get free carried through to a final investment decision. Bit on the corporate structure, so no debt, nice tight structure, trying to look a bit more North American, 70 odd million shares on issue, 11 million Aussie in cash at the end of December. And a share price that sort of hovers between 50 and 60 cents. And a good register, I think, for a small junior. Our largest shareholder is the Crescat Fund out of Denver. We've also got in our top register Acorn Capital, a fund here in Melbourne. We've got the Gold Mountain Asset Management out of Hong Kong, which is the Sprott Zijin joint venture, and a few others, including a few high net worth and quite a retail component. So quite a good mix of institutional and retail, I think, for a small junior. The board, 2 of us are mining engineers, operational M&A, business development, mergers. In those roles, you are always dealing with exploration as well as development. Jeremy, more corporate finance, investment side based in London. And as Quinton mentioned, Rowan and I are basically the 2 managers, the 2 management in White Rock, based just down the road here in Ballarat as well. And Quinton is formally our technical advisor. It's a little bit unusual. Aussies don't tend to have that model of a technical advisor, again, given the North American interest on our register and our Alaskan asset. And Quinton has been great, not just as an economic geologist, but also to assist us in the North American markets. So I'm a mining engineer, a little bit of a dig at the geologists. They were very imaginative when they called this project Red Mountain. One of the deposits that we drill is called Dry Creek, and you can work out why. And the other deposit that makes up that JORC resource is called WTF, which is another story. So where is the Red Mountain project? It's 100 kilometres due south of Fairbanks, which is a half-hour chopper or half-hour Cessna flight. It's also due east of Healy on the main highway, the Parks Highway, between Anchorage and Fairbanks. So even though Alaska is infrastructure poor, we are actually quite well placed. We have a camp located in the eastern margin of the Red Mountain VMS project, and only yesterday we announced securing a 30-person camp to support the Last Chance project. We've had excellent experiences in Alaska, and a real demonstration of that is the Last Chance gold anomaly we were assaying for in 2019 on open ground. We announced that discovery in January last year, and by July last year we were drilling it. So I think that, and in the COVID world, I think that's a great testimony to the great team that we have in country, based out of Fairbanks, but also the ability within the Alaskan permitting system to be able to move so quickly, peg it and drill it. As I mentioned, VMS, large scale holding, touched on the maiden JORC resource, so you can see the significant metal contribution, silver, zinc, lead and gold. It sits within a global resource, so at a lower cutoff grade, so significant first start. VMSs come in camps, come in clusters, and we've got at least a dozen drill targets waiting to be drilled, not just these resources here that you see there to add to at depth. We've also got this great gold potential. This VMS system also sits in the Tintina gold belt, host to Pogo that the Australian company Northern Star recently purchased, Kinross's Fort Knox mine, and the Barrick JV with the Donlin deposit. So we've got a great address. We've got a great package that hosts both VMS and Cretaceous gold. So that's our land holding. So the VMS sits out to the right, to the east, in that land package, and you can see the purple last chance more in the western part of that tenement package. And the green halos surrounding it are also anomalous gold from stream sediment sampling technique that we used last year. So we've expanded it. Our original acquisition 4 years ago, this land holding was only 15 square kilometres in the far right-hand side. We took out this district scale strategic first mover position, seeing the high potential for discoveries, both VMS and gold. And it's important to note that, as Quinton mentioned, that the last chance gold target discovered from stream sediment sampling was of a similar tenor to that which Pogo, the 10 million ounce Pogo gold mine, was discovered on. That's zooming into the gold anomaly, 15 square kilometres, 8,000, almost 3,000 samples taken. As a mining engineer, my comment is that gold's got to have come from somewhere. We've just got to find where it came from and how. Lots of samples, rock chips, soils, you can see some fairly significant. And in the course of that 7 months that I mentioned, we were still able to get 8 what we call sighter holes in. 8 holes, only a couple of 100 metres deep, over 15 square kilometres. It's there ready for deeper drilling, and that's our plan next year. I should say, sorry, that is the plan for this year. We think we're at the top of a high-grade quartz system, gold quartz system. That's the theory, and that's where one of the drills will be targeting this year, to drill some deeper holes to see whether this theory holds up. But also, and we only announced this in January this year, just to the north of last chance, we came across significant outcropping VMS Horizon, 10 kilometres along strike, and you can see some of the rock chip samples there. So a second drill is going to be drilling some of these VMS prospects. The geologist who was doing a lot of this work said they're as good as the VMS prospects that we have out to the east that make up that JORC resource. So we're pretty excited to be the first people to be poking holes into this prospective area as well. And then thirdly, so this is the JORC resource. This is out to the east. That's Dry Creek, very imaginative. Some of our drilling that we did, you can see 4 and 5 metres wide. Great intersections, silver over 1,000 grams per tonne, zinc 19%. This ore body is open along strike and down dip. Until our hole in 2019, the deepest hole was only 200 metres. We did a 200-metre step out. We hit the first of 2 lenses. Unfortunately, October and ground conditions prevented us from pushing on to the second lens, but it confirmed that the stratigraphy extended down dip. And given that it extends down dip, it also then begs the question, is it open along strike for a kilometre? So what is our plan for this year? Our plan is to put 1 drill on the last chance gold target to test this huge gold anomaly to see whether we are at the top of a high-grade gold system. We're going to put a drill on these new VMS targets that we only announced in January. And we also propose to put a drill on the Dry Creek deposit to test its down dip potential. We also have 2 other projects, as I mentioned, and I think that's important for the investor. We're not just an Alaskan play. So we're currently in the process of acquiring Austar Gold, and that photo is the head frame of the famous Morningstar mine and the current gold processing plant. The Morningstar mine in its history produced 800,000 ounces of gold at 26 grams a tonne. It was the forerunner to a very famous Australian company called Western Mining Corporation, or WMC. So we're in the process of acquiring that. And that's been announced. The next major step is a scheme booklet with an independent expert report and evaluation. We hope that that comes out in the next month. And then there's an Austar shareholder meeting to vote for or against. And if all things go to plan, we hope to get the keys to this asset in early July. Why do we think it's a good merger? It offers White Rock a large prospective land package, only 150 kilometres southeast of Fosterville, which I'm sure most people have heard of. This land package in its own right has produced over 1.5 million ounces historically. There's over 11 historical gold mines and many prospects. The area has not had any systematic exploration. It also brings White Rock into the producer status, albeit small. There is current gold production going on and a processing plant. And the critical point there is that as an exploration play, this acquisition also brings a processing plant such that any successful exploration can be monetized by developing and putting it through the existing plant. We also think it brings counter-cyclical news flow to an Alaskan winter, and also in this COVID world brings the project back closer to home into the state of Victoria, where Rowan and I both live. So I've touched on those high grade, great historical production, got mining leases, whilst narrow, half to a metre wide, some fantastic gold grades. It's one of those narrow vein underground nuggety gold mines where you will drill for structure and mine for grade. It's a long section of the mine. That shaft is 800 metres deep. It's flooded below 10 level, but there's mining at McNally's stope as we speak, and lots of areas that have been poorly drilled. So therein lies an in-mine exploration opportunity. But there's also this fantastic regional land package, 670 square kilometres, controlling this Walhalla Woods Point Dyke Swarm, that overall historically produced 6 million ounces, of which this land package contributed about 1.5. And there are geological similarities to Fosterville. I know a lot of companies play the nearism game to Fosterville. This is a genuine contender in its own right. You can see our land package there in yellow. TSXV listed Fosterville South to our immediate west, and the Morningstar mine sitting right in the middle of our land package. So the acquisition at the time, Austar, compared to 20 of its peers, very undervalued. We're offering a 50% premium, and we still believe that there's plenty of runway, uplift, upside, even on a merged basis for White Rock and the merged co, once we get Austar to extract value, conduct systematic exploration, right-size the mine, and get that producing economically. And third but not least, Mt Carrington. White Rock was founded on the Mt Carrington asset. Northern New South Wales, JORC resources for gold, JORC resources for silver, JORC reserve, on mining lease. That photo on the bottom left, you literally walk onto ore, 2 gold pits pre-strip, there's a tailings dam there. Its next step is to take the PFS to DFS and the permitting, and we're negotiating a joint venture agreement with Thompson Resources to achieve that. It's got some fantastic financial metrics, a payback just over 14 months, spits out 30 million free cash a year, as I mentioned, once in production. And that's that without any contribution from the remaining 2 gold resources, and it's without any contribution from the 23 million ounces of silver. So initial 5-year mine life, but conversion of any of those resources will add years, and so will any exploration success in the 180 square kilometres that the Mt Carrington project covers. So the Thompson joint venture, Thompson have other assets in and around Mt Carrington. So with Mt Carrington works for Thompson, it enables some of these otherwise stranded, isolated assets to be enabled, to be processed, for example, potentially through Mt Carrington. So it's an earn-in. Thompson will complete the DFS, complete the environmental impact study to a satisfactory level and can earn 30%. Once that's approved through the government and final investment decision can be made, they can move to 51%. And if they want to move to 70%, they pay White Rock $12.5 million Australian, and then it's developed along those lines. White Rock is free carried. Thompson pay for the care and maintenance, and also put some cash into the White Rock bank account. So, you know, great opportunity there. So why would you invest? Why should you? Not investment advice, just to maybe make you think about what I've just presented. So the Red Mountain, silver, zinc, gold, VMS, Mt Carrington news flow bubbling away in the background, the last chance gold target in particular that I mentioned, and that news flow that we are going to be generating from having 3 drill rigs turning by early June. I think an investor should always think about the jurisdiction that they're in. Alaska in the top 5 of the Fraser Institute. You know, both follow the rule of law, both speak English. You know, there are places where sovereign risk is a risk, and I think an investor needs to consider that. And I won't be the last one that ever says that I think we have a broad and deep skill set in the management team, with Quinton Henning also assisting and in the board itself. So look, and not to forget, I should say not to forget, come June, July, all things being equal, and with a favourable vote by the Austar shareholders, the acquisition of that Victorian gold explorer and producer opportunity. So with that, that's the story. Maybe now I'll hand it back to you, Campbell.
Sure. Thank you for all your questions. Everyone else, please send some more in. Just go to the question channel there, and we'll see them in almost immediately. With the addition of the last chance gold anomaly to the Red Mountain project, do you have an exit strategy for the project, or do you intend to take the project through to production?
Yeah, look, that's a very good question. I think the reality is that exploring in Alaska is expensive, and I think for a small junior, there's a point where it becomes a little bit problematic. This will be our 4th season in Alaska. We were 2 years ago in a joint venture with a $1 billion listed ASX Sandfire. So I think going forward after this season, we will keep all options on the table, but we are certainly open to the ideas of joint venturing. We've also considered whether a spin out, IPO, or putting the asset into a TSXV vehicle might be a better value creation for White Rock shareholders. So we'll get through this season, see how our 3 drills go, but certainly we're not fixed on any particular exit strategy. We'll see what makes sense for White Rock and its shareholders and adding value from this project.
Excellent. This is someone's sentiment. Maybe, as you've alluded, difficult and expensive to operate at 2 ends of the world. What was the rationale in combining the projects in one company, I guess, at the time?
I will point out that Alaska is so far around the time zone that it's actually not that bad for the east coast of Australia. So we are actually not at the ends of the world. It's a fact. There is actually a very good, the worst overlap is this one with New York. You know, there's a thing called, you know, you don't try and, you know, manage an exploration project from a head office anywhere in the world. You know, you have budgets, plans, reporting, and you let the guys on the ground run it. So, you know, we've run 3 seasons on time, on budget, without incident, without accident, and last year in a COVID world. So, you know, mining companies learn to operate internationally. We don't see an issue with that. But what we do see is certainly a North American interest, and it might be that the natural geographical home for that asset sits in a North American exchange like the TSX. But I am an advocate, and proof is to date that a good asset will attract funding no matter where the, no matter what exchange it sits in. I think that's the case. You can look at London raising money for African projects. You can look at Australians raising money for African projects or South American projects. So I'm less of a, the asset must be where on the exchange closest geographically, but we're certainly open to, what makes sense for White Rock and its assets.
Someone mentioned that Sandfire was mentioned just now. How do they fit into the picture again?
So 2 years ago, we had a joint venture agreement on the Alaskan asset with Sandfire, where in a similar model to the one with our current Mt Carrington project, they were to spend money to earn into that asset. And so they needed to spend $20 million over the first few years, and they would earn a percent of that asset. We kicked off year one, where White Rock was the manager. So this is in 2019. Ran geophysics, geochem, drilled about 4,000 metres, spent about $8 million of Sandfire money on the asset, and then they withdrew after year one. They had other corporate focuses. They were buying a copper mine in Botswana, so they pulled out. So White Rock still has 100% of that asset. There's no residual Sandfire involvement, but we were the beneficiary of spending $8 million of their money. So that, I guess, goes to show that White Rock is flexible in how it wants to move projects forward. We're not so passionate that we won't share or joint venture if it makes sense to move a project forward.
For the Red Mountain project, what kind of anomalies and how strong are they at the mentioned 30 square kilometer area, which has gold potential?
So there was a slide in that presentation deck that shows the significant gold anomaly over that 15 square kilometres.
You can pull it up if you want.
Based on the 2,500 soil samples that we did. I'm coming to it. Here, sorry, there it is.
So we just see your last slide, but it's okay.
Okay, well, I've pulled it up on my screen, so I'm not sure, Campbell. For the listener, if they go to our website, the person that asked that question, there is a slide called Last Chance Prospect, and the subtitle is Soil Sampling in 2020, and they will be able to see the graphic of the sampling contoured, draped over the topography, and they'll see the 2,800 samples, and they will see the significance and the range of sampling within that.
Who does your drilling in Alaska? Is it in-house or a contractor?
No, it's a contractor, definitely, and we use Alaskans.
What zinc equivalent cutoff grade would you use if you do a resource estimation today?
So the resource estimation originally done in 2017 used a 3% zinc cutoff.
All right, Stu?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Matt. I guess while we're on Alaska, how did you pick up this project originally and get such a big land holding? I know that I know such a big land holding like this with anomalies is what attracted people like Quentin to you guys, but just wondering how you got so lucky in the first place.
Yeah, so look, that's a good question. It'll be an interesting chapter in someone's story. So I joined White Rock in 2016, and my first task was to try and raise money for Mt Carrington, our gold and silver project in New South Wales. And I'd worked with a previous group in Sydney, and I rang them to see if they could help me raise money. And they said they weren't in a position to at that time, but were we interested in an Alaskan asset? So we weren't actually looking at the time. And I've said it to many people, I've learned in my career never to say no to something I don't know what I'm saying no to. So we had a look at it. It was a 15 square kilometre land package that some contractors in Fairbanks had been sitting on for 10 years. They had picked it up off the previous TSXV company that had it. So that 15 square kilometres was last on the TSXV in a company called Grade Resources before it was acquired by Agnico Eagle. Agnico Eagle weren't so interested in that 15 square kilometres, and so these contractors picked it up. An Australian came along, found that these contractors had this land package and tried to IPO it, or take out an option or monetize it. So we looked at it. It, as I said, 15 square Ks, came with 127 drill hole database. So, you know, great news flow, great shareholder base injection into White Rock, which at that stage was only Mt Carrington. So it diversified the White Rock story. Paid $1 million in paper for it. The rest of the land in that area was all open. So we got open domain geophysics and geochem, and went from there. We went from 15 square Ks to 140 to 470 to now just under 800.
And then how do the mineralization systems work there? You got the gold, like quartz vein, or is it orogenic, and then the VMS kind of clusters with the zinc?
So the gold is an intrusive related, so Cretaceous granite setting. So that's a specific setting, not dissimilar to Kinross's Fort Knox and Donlin. And the VMS was the original setting for that was a seafloor smoker deposition sedimentary base. So quite different geological deposition theories. And that's what is really good about this land package, is that we've got two distinct types offering, you know, silver, zinc, but also offering gold only.
Yeah. And then how many different like VMS structures have you found at the property, and are they outcropping? What have you found, you know, your most useful exploration tool?
So we've flown airborne EM, we've done on-ground CSAMT, we've done significant soil and rock chip sampling and mapping, and we've also done satellite spectral. You put all of that together and it lights up, our original work lit up 30 similar targets to the two known deposits. Not many of them outcrop. The terrain is fairly steep and a lot of it is covered in talus, which is why the soil sampling is a brilliant tool to allow you to see beneath the surface, as is flying airborne EM, which can look down a couple of 100 metres below the surface. So, Stuart, it's a combination of tools. You know, we've found 6 only last year VMS outcroppings that we wanted to drill that I mentioned, and earlier work in the area to the east, you know, identified 30 targets. So, you know, VMS has come in camps, come in clusters. You know, so we've already got 2 lenses. So, you know, it's a great exploration opportunity underpinned by that chalk resource.
Yeah. And then have you done any met on the mineralized systems there?
No, not yet. There was some original metallurgy work done by Grade Resources, which showed very good zinc recoveries and silver and gold. We'll do more drilling, get more core, and at the right time, we'll start doing some more met test work.
Yep, great. And then switching, the upcoming 2021 program in Alaska, have you kind of finalized the target areas yet and drill locations, and do you need any extra permits for drilling this season?
So we don't need any extra permits for drilling, which is a brilliant thing about Alaska, a point I made earlier. We've got the 3 broad areas. So we've got the Dry Creek VMS, that's fairly well defined because we know where that ore body sits, and we know where therefore to drill underneath it. So that's the Dry Creek area out to the east. Last chance, 15 square kilometres. We've actually still got a drill pad from last year, so we know that it's one area we're going to drill. And then the third area, these new VMS outcrops, we want to do a little bit more work on ground before we work out where the best place to build the first pad is. but we've certainly got the areas zeroed in. It's now just working out the best optimum spot for the geology, but also for the terrain. You know, it is fairly steep, will be chopper supported, but no, we've got a pretty good idea.
Yeah, okay. And then back to Oz, so Mt Carrington, that first stage of the joint venture or proposed joint venture with Thompson, how long would the EIS take, do you think, roughly?
So I tell people, and I'm a mining engineer that's, you know, done that sort of thing before, somewhere between 12 and 18 months. I think 12 months is going to be going very well. There is a 6-month period to complete the studies, but then a lot of it is in the public domain and public hearings and public feedback and community consultation. And, you know, that's where some float needs to be allowed for. So yeah, 12, 18 months, Stuart.
Yeah, and assuming like they had the construction finance tomorrow, how long is like the build there and, you know, first production?
Yeah, no, good question. So again, the feasibility study engineers contemplated a 13-month build and commission. I'm a mining engineer that's done that before. Things often don't quite go as well as you plan. So again, I tell people 12 to 18 months.
Yep. Well, there's always hurdles in the mining space. And then on the Austar merger, you know, what was the kind of rationale? What excited you about the opportunity and the kind of thesis behind it?
So I was on the board of Austar for 4 years before I resigned in January due to a conflict of interest. So you can work out who was maybe the architect of the merger. So what I saw, and a lot of my experience has been in narrow vein underground mining. I was at Beaconsfield, for those that are aware of that, you know, great mine in Tasmania. Ran Ballarat gold mine here in Victoria. Worked at Porgera in PNG, worked in WA. And what I saw in the Austar asset was a great narrow vein gold mining opportunity. You know, as I mentioned, huge production history, 800,000 ounces at almost an ounce a tonne. There aren't many of those in the world. So I saw that in-mine opportunity, but also the land package, the regional opportunity. So that's partly why I was on the board, to bring that mining expertise. And rolling the clock forward, I just felt that, and you know, talking to both boards, it wasn't just my decision, but both boards saw that there was good synergies by merging the two companies. You know, bigger balance sheet, more diversification than just one project. You know, White Rock brings a great North American investor focus to the story, and White Rock can bring a lot of technical and board expertise into that play as well. So those advantages, I mentioned counter-cyclical news flow for White Rock, given, you know, Alaskan asset, and also importantly in this COVID world, you know, bringing a project back closer to home. I think a lot of companies will struggle over time with COVID if they're domiciled in one country and their projects in another, and certainly if expatriates have to fly internationally to help run mines. I think, you know, over time that could become problematic for some. So, you know, that merger ticked a lot of boxes for both companies.
And is the kind of first order priority at Austar, you know, focused on production and you know, implementing cost structure savings and that, or exploration?
So look, we're still going through due diligence, scheme booklet. We don't have the keys to the asset yet. So some of that potentially a little bit early for White Rock to be enunciating, but certainly, you know, the gold production asset is important component, absolutely. You know, we'd want to see some good underground diamond drilling occurring. We'd like to see, you know, a bit more of a mine plan ahead of it to get a maybe a more stable production profile. But also concurrently is the regional exploration. There's been no systematic exploration, and White Rock's primary interest in this asset is its exploration potential, both regionally and in mine. You know, the production asset getting that to be economic and sustainable and continuous is important, you know, spitting out some free cash flow and being there ready to monetize any exploration success. So exploration first with the production supporting behind it.
Yeah. And then just one last for me before I pass back to Campbell. The in the Ozstar tenement package, who would be your neighbours, and is there much activity? I know Victorian goldfields have had a resurgence in the last kind of couple of years. Have there been people pegging ground around the Ozstar projects?
Yes, so again, there is a slide in the slide deck. It sounded like there was no point me bringing up a slide, so I won't bother. I'll just try and verbalise. So yeah, look, the Victorian gold scene is going through a second renaissance. I was at Ballarat, so running Castlemaine Goldfields, you know, 10 years ago when Victorian gold wasn't very topical. Ballarat and Bendigo had both disappointed a lot of shareholders. But roll the clock forward with the outstanding success of Fosterville, there has certainly been a land rush. Yep. You know, there's actually quite a number of TSXV companies now in Victoria. You know, the darling of the market, if you like, probably the most well known is Fosterville South, and they're currently drilling to our northwest, and they actually butt right up against some of our tenements to our immediate west. Fosterville South spun out a few assets into a thing called Leviathan Gold. So there's Mawson Gold. There are quite a few now TSXV companies, not just in our area, but also to our west, obviously around Fosterville, but even west, you know, around Bendigo, around where I am here in Ballarat, and further to our west around Stawell. So certainly over the last few years where there was a lot of vacant ground, you won't find much now.
Understood. Thanks for that, Campbell.
Just kind of wrapping up and going to focus on the numbers. Could you elaborate on the cash at hand, yearly overhead burn rate, 2021 budget splits over the projects, when we need to raise capital again, all that good stuff.
So clearly I'm not going to answer stuff that's not in the public domain. And that's not just being cute, that's a legal obligation. So I hope the person asking the question will understand I'm not a politician, but I won't tell you things that aren't already in the public domain. So cash on hand into December, 11 million, that's public domain, we mentioned that. Burn rate, you can work that out from our quarterly statements. So our G&A to be ASX listed with a board and KPMG as auditors, and registry and insurances is around $1 million Australian a year, roughly. And then anything over that is discretionary. So, you know, exploration spend is how much do you want to spend? How many drills do you want to use? You know, none, 1, 2, 3. So you then match your exploration spend to your cash on hand and the interest in the marketplace, you know, if there was the need for any further funding. That's probably the best answer I can give, Campbell.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to bring up regarding money, capital structure, anything like that?
So capital structure, I pointed out earlier, you know, 70 million shares on issue. Lots of Aussies are sort of in the billions, so we are quite a tight capital structure, which is good. You know, as I mentioned, no debt. Great share register, I've touched on that with Crestcat, a few other institutions, but also a good retail following. The OTCQX cross-listing to help out North Americans, certainly the US. Often it's problematic for a US citizen to trade Australian shares, but the OTCQX, our cross-listing there, allows a US resident to buy White Rock shares in the US time zone in US dollars. And I think that's a really important point for any listeners based in North America, to make that as easy as we can in Australia for people in North America interested in this story.
Excellent. Thank you for summarizing that again. And with that, we'll close and We'll be queuing you for feedback. Please share your thoughts on the company. They'll get to Matt. Some of you have already given me some great feedback, much appreciated. And with that, I'll give you the last word, Matt.
So look, thanks everyone for taking the time to listen. Hopefully you found it interesting. I do encourage you to go to our website where there is that presentation. There is also an ad info, so if you have any questions, just use the contact us at ad info. You've also got, I think, the opportunity to go through the Amvest group. So look, thanks everyone for listening, and also thanks Campbell and thanks Stuart for setting this up and allowing me the opportunity to hopefully explain a little bit more about White Rock, its story, its strategy, why we do what we do. Sometimes that may be not too clear. So hopefully the listeners are maybe a little bit more understanding of what we're trying to do with the company, add value for shareholders and advance our project. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.